Good morning. Okay, so for today what we're going to be talking about is project number 4. And project number 4 is going to consist of box 1 having an outlet that is fully hot, meaning that both items of this duplex outlet are going to contain electricity. At the same time as transmitting electricity to box 2, that will have a switch controlling a lamp holder in box number 3. Okay, you'll notice that in box number 1 with our outlet, we are relaying power. Think of it in the way of using this outlet as a wire nut. Okay, so we're relaying power through our outlet all the way to box number 2, where it will go to our switch then that's controlling our lamp holder. In this case, our cable, we're going to be setting aside our red wire, so think of it as using a 12-2, not a 12-3. Okay, so again, this is going to be an outlet that's going to be utilized as a wire nut in a way, and our 12-3, instead of being 12-3, we're using it as a 12-2. Okay, so just set aside the red wire. So all we'll need from our cable is just the bare ground, black wire, white wire. So how do we get there? So we're going to get there with a so aside from our example, let's start with box 1. And like I said before, when you go to put these together, start with one single color. Start with one type of wire. In this case, let's start with the hot, all right? And I'm talking about going from box 1 all the way to box 3 with only your hot wires. From there, you could circle back and take care of your neutrals and do the grounds last. So we'll start with our hot wire, and we'll start with box number 1, our outlet. Again, you have two sides. You have your hot and you have your neutral. Gold being hot, silver being the neutral. So we'll have our wire stripper. We'll take our black wire, form our pigtails. And then we'll form our pigtail to our second side. And again, the reason why we're using this outlet is, I keep referring to it as, being like a wire nut where we can transfer heat through the outlet to go to box number 2. Keep in mind, these outlets, they have this tab here that connects this terminal to the second terminal. So you could be able to relay your power that way. And also, if I were to just solely have a single outlet that's being powered into that box and going nowhere else, I would only have to wire that one side, and I could still have power go to both sides of my duplex outlet. But in this case, since I want to relay power from box 1 to box 2, I'm going to use this second terminal here to do just that and relay power over to box number 2. And there's hot wires connected in box number 2, and again, you're just setting aside that red wire. Just imagine it as a 12-2, not a 12-3. So we'll move on to box number 2 for our hot wires. Box number 2 is going to be our single pole, single throw, also known as toggle switch, or you may hear me in previous videos refer to it as a SPST. single pole, single throw. So this switch, again, we're only going to use our black wire. Do not use the red wire. It's not going to be hooked up to any kind of electricity. Since we have our black wire used, relaying power from our outlet, we'll relay that power over to our switch. Again, these are only gold terminals, so you're going to be hooking up the black wire, your hot wire, to these gold terminals. There are no silver terminals. There are no neutral terminals when it comes to this switch. So there's one side. Our second side, our black wire. We're using this for the first time, so we're going to be stripping off a little bit of some coating. And there's our hot wire for box number 2 connected to our switch. Now moving on to box number 3. Cruising right along, we have our lamp holder. Gold terminals, silver terminals, and we are using the black wire that is hooked up to our light switch. Make a pigtail on your black wire. And again, with each pigtail that you're making, make sure that you're facing them clockwise, not counterclockwise. So you want to have your pigtails pointed in the direction that your terminals are turning. In this case, this way that the wire is actually going to be turning into that terminal and not be forced out of that terminal. If you have it facing counterclockwise, what happens is as you're turning that terminal, tightening it, it will actually push out that wire from underneath. So that way we got a good lock underneath. There we have it. So we have our hot wire going from box 1 all the way over to box number 2. Just by having this wire relayed from our outlet, or through our outlet, better case, to go over to box number 2 to our switch. This switch, just by turning it off, it will still operate our light, and also we'll still have 100% power to our outlet. Remember, the power is going into box number 1. And so that way that outlet will have 100% power just because you have it also wired into your switch. When you turn that light switch off, it will not turn off your outlet. So you'll only be controlling your lamp holder and not both your lamp holder as well as your outlet, okay? It will only control your lamp holder. So since we have all of our hot wire wired in, we'll now move on to our neutrals. And I'm going to start from the back and move towards our, we'll start with box number 3 and move towards box number 1. So box number 3, we have our neutral. We'll form our pigtail. And again, this is a neutral wire. So this is going to go to our silver terminal. Make sure you have it facing clockwise. And then tighten up your terminal. Okay, box number 3, we have both of our hot and neutral. I'll come back from my ground. Okay, box number 2 is going to be pretty easy when it comes to wiring in your neutrals. Kind of set that aside so that way you can see. Again, the switch is not going to have any kind of neutral terminal. So in this case, all that you're having to do is wire together the two white wires between the two cables. So I'm going to strip off some neutral wire here. Join together these two neutral wires. There, simple enough for the neutral wiring for box number 2. And then finally moving on to box number 1. For box number 1, you have, just kind of referring back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the video, you have your hots, then you have your neutrals. You do the same exact thing that you did with the hot wires by taking your neutral terminals and wire into both terminals with your two neutral wires. And again, as long as you have them facing clockwise, and as long as you have both neutral terminals are connected by that tab on your outlet, you can have both neutral wires hooked up to the terminals on your outlet. And there it is. We have our neutral wires going into our outlet. So again, we're relaying that power that's going to our lamp holder. It'll circle back through our white wire, be connected to our two white wires in box number 2, and then finish off the two white wires hooked up to both neutral terminals in your outlet. That'll then lead back over to your power in. And finally, our final piece is going to be our grounds, okay? And again, when it comes to these projects, we are grounding all appliances and all cables. And so in this case with our outlet, we have a ground on our appliance here, the outlet. And so we have 1, 2, 3 grounds because we're using both cables, and we have a ground that comes from our box. And so what we're going to do is we'll take one of the bare wires, run it through our wire nut that has a hole in the very top. We will then form our pigtail. Be sure to face it clockwise, and then hook it up to our ground terminal. Again, with these outlets, switches, any kind of appliance that has a ground terminal, it's a terminal that's going to be colored green. So it's going to be the green terminal will have its ground. Here we have our ground that's hooked up to our outlet. We'll then move on to box number 2 and hook up our grounds. Again, you have a bare wire that comes from one cable, a bare wire that comes from the second cable, all joined together with a green wire coming from the box. I'll take a bare wire pigtail, run it to our green terminal on our switch. Tighten up our ground terminal, the green terminal, and box number 2 is now grounded. Now with box number 3, this is going to be unique, where we do not have a ground when it comes to our lamp holder. However, we do have a ground that's coming from our cable, and we do have a ground that's coming from our box number 3. I'm just going to take this single box right here. I'm just going to take box number 3. And I'm just going to wire nut these together. And there we have it. We have our 2 grounds that are going to be put together for box number 3. And just to kind of sum it all up, we have our power that it's going to go from our power in. This cable is going into box number 1. Black wire, 1 single black wire from our power in going into our outlet, out of the second terminal of our outlet, running over to box number 2. That will then go over to our switch. By turning on this switch, I can have power that goes through box number 2, over to box number 3, to our lamp holder. Okay, that is our hot. From our neutral, we are relaying it from our lamp holder back through our cable to box number 2, where it will then be 2 neutral wires joined together, because there are no neutral terminals when it comes to our single pole, single throw switch. The neutral wire will then go through our cable over to our outlet, duplex outlet. It's going to have our neutral wire going into 1 terminal, out the second terminal, back through our power in, going out of box number 1 to our power source. And that concludes project number 4.